So the reasons for going pesticide-free, well, compliance with and support for various bits of legislation, public concern, and to help meet sustainability or other green goals are the three real driving factors, we think. There are various bits of legislation, some of it binding, some of it not binding, all of which are sort of drivers for going pesticide-free. So we have the UK National Action Plan on pesticides, which came from the EU Directive on the sustainable use of pesticides. Now, I have to say that we were incredibly disappointed with the way the UK government enacted this. They did the bare minimum, and in many places actually reduced what they were already doing. Nonetheless, it does state within it that we must take all reasonable precautions to protect or avoid endangering human health when using pesticides. So the simplest way is not to use them. That's it, job done. Confine pesticide application to target areas and ensure that the amount used is as low as is reasonably practicable. And I think we've seen already today that as low as is reasonably practical is zero in many cases. So that's one of the drivers. There's the UK National Pollinator Strategy, so we're talking about the bees. Great. This was started a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. Because pollinators across the UK, not just bees, but all pollinator species, are suffering massive declines. And a lot of that is to do with pesticides, a lot of that's to do with agricultural use of pesticides. But we're seeing more and more that urban pollinators, or the urban setting, is a really useful habitat for pollinators. So stopping the use of pesticides, increasing their habitat within urban areas, which can include things like no mowing areas, is something that we should all be looking at. So every town and city should be looking at increasing its space for pollinators, and stopping the use of pesticides is one way to achieve that objective. Really? Oh yeah, here we go. It's wild birds. Again, this is a DEFRA Guidance Document. But as a competent authority, which includes local authorities, you have a duty to maintain and protect habitats for wild birds. Once again, stopping the use of pesticides, allowing different areas to grow wild, changing the way you manage things, is a way that you can use to meet that requirement. And then the EU Water Framework Directive, which is still applicable and will remain in place. It may change after we leave the EU, particularly if the National Farmers Union has its way. It's a very, very important thing. It's a legal requirement in many cases, but it's also a financial benefit to us because we won't pay so much. So stopping the use of pesticides in urban areas will help meet our, the things we have to do under this Water Framework Directive. Blanket spraying, which I know none of you do here because you're all very, reliable, correct contractors. But that's been banned, but it still goes on. So this guy here, that I said earlier, this guy actually sprayed me. He had, at the front, he had all the sprayers going and he was waving a hand lance around, spraying just along the streets, every single place here. I got glyphosate all up my legs, across my shoes. We use him a lot, actually. We use him a lot. This was in Hove. I complained to Brighton Council at the time and got nothing. It didn't happen. And then we got lots more photographs of it happening. And it happens, we get called a lot. It happens all over the country. But it's not supposed to happen. And there have been estimates, this is from some people in the industry, that if that was properly maintained, you can actually halve the use of glyphosate anyway, just by stopping blanket applications. So but that is a regulation. You're not actually allowed to do it anymore. So again, stopping the use is better than, is the best way of achieving that. Public concern. I think we all realise that the public are concerned about this. So these are a variety of pictures of the public. This is our Pesticide-Free Hackney campaign. 38 Degrees petition. This is one from Bristol with nearly 7,000 signatures on it. There are currently about 151 different, well, probably more. This is just 38 Degrees. 151 petitions across the country from different towns and cities that want to go pesticide-free. The public concern is growing. You know, and as councillors, people should listen to what the public want to do. But also, you know, the contractors, this is what the public want to see. So that's another driver for change. And this is quite an interesting one. I don't want to alarm anybody, but this was a study done in Auckland, in New Zealand. And it looked at all the various human rights legislation that currently exists, and it put it in the context of roadside spraying. And it concluded that there is a very high possibility that by exposing the public, the general public, to pesticides is a breach of their human rights. And that could, in theory, lead to prosecutions and cases to come. It hasn't yet, but people are looking into it. People are looking into pesticide or being exposed to pesticides as a human rights issue, which we believe it is. You know, we shouldn't be being poisoned. But that has a knock-on effect for councils and governments and the people applying them. So if you're not applying them, you're not abusing people's human rights. And also in the US, there are a growing number of cases that are being aimed at Monsanto for glyphosate poisoning. They are going ahead, and that's quite new. We had a farmer in France won a successful case against Monsanto, not for glyphosate, but for something else. That was the first one. That set a precedent. It would only take one successful prosecution in the UK to open the floodgates of litigation. And the people applying the pesticides, the people specifying that those pesticides be sprayed, are the ones that are going to be liable for it if and when it does happen. So again, by stopping the use of pesticides, you are taking that out of the equation. That's something you won't have to worry about. And I think it's coming. It will come eventually. It's about being prepared. And the benefits of going pesticide-free, well, all that stuff I just mentioned, you can comply with that and avoid all that. We're reducing exposure of the public, but not only the public, also the council workers, the contractors, the people that handle pesticides. We know in the world of agriculture, the farmers and farm workers, the ones who are most regularly in contact with pesticides, are the ones that are most affected by them. Rates of childhood leukemia amongst farmers and their families are much higher than the general population because of their exposure to pesticides. So contractors, people using pesticides on a daily basis, are exposing themselves to this all the time. And the public, of course, are being exposed. So, again, let's try and stop this where we possibly can. So better habitats for urban biodiversity. There are potentials for long-term cost savings, and all the other things I've mentioned, so reduced contamination of water and helping meet sustainability goals.